Hello and welcome to Houston Baptist University. Today's presentation will cover the aspect and concept of generations and their affiliation with different training and development activities. To start, let's cover the different generations that are currently in the workforce and the one which is the silent generation, which is actually leaving the workforce. The silent generation is from 1925 to 1944. Baby boomers is from 1945 to 1964. Generation X, also known as Gen Xers, is 1965 to 1980. Generation Y, or more commonly known as Millennials, is 1981 to the year 2000. And Generation Z, or Gen Zers, is from 2001 to a yet-to-be-determined end date. We'll notice that there are major social pivot points within the United States context between each of the major generations. So between the silent generation and baby boomers, that was the end of World War II. Between the baby boomers and Generation X, that was the Civil Rights Movement, 1964-1965. Between the Gen X and the Millennials, that was really the end of the Carter presidency and the beginning of the Reagan side, with the Iranian hostage crisis a major pivot point within politics within the United States. And between 2000 and 2001, specifically 9/11-2001, was the split between the Millennials and the Gen Zers for the new generation. So in context of the United States social occurrences is where we can define generations for the United States population. However, if we go internationally, generations are not carried forward across all different nationalities and different cultures. These generations are specific to the United States culture. Going on, let's talk about how the different generations perceive digital or virtual or training from that perspective. So you can see at the very tip top, we have left off the silent generation because those individuals have practically aged out of the workforce in relation to how we're going to be doing training and development. So baby boomers, yes, they use technology. Yes, they are adopters of the technology and can be quite tech savvy. But from the traditional sense, they are very much from the perspective they did not grow up with technology and had to adopt most of that technology that we use today along the way. Generation X, these are the digital immigrants into the technology. They did grow up with some of the technology, but again, most of the current technology, whether you think about social media, smartphones, etc., they had to immigrate into using that technology. They were not necessarily born with a smartphone in their hand. Generation Y are digital natives. Most of the technology in the version and form that we see today, millennials grew up with that technology. It was always part of their lives and something they were very accustomed to, and most of the technology has been evolved from when they were younger into what it is today. Gen Zers is a little bit different from that perspective. Yes, most of the technology was available for them in the current form that it is today. They were born practically with a smartphone in their hand, but they're really the on-demand generation from the perspective that most of the content, most of the data, most of the information has always been available. They did not have to go down to the corner store to rent a DVD to be able to watch a movie. They simply found the subscription or found the video online and simply pushed a button and boom, it was playing for them. So they're very much the on-demand generation. How these things play into how the individuals impact themselves against training and development, we can think about baby boomers from the perspective that they really are looking at the technology side of training as they're adopting and trying to use the technology. Perhaps they're not quite as tech savvy as some of the younger generations. Gen X, they're going to be immigrating in. They're able to use the technology, but again, they still have some of the older biases. Perhaps they like to physically read a book rather than look at something on a Kindle or through PDF. The Generation Y, they're very, very, very comfortable with technology and actually expect to use it. But Gen Z, they don't want to wait for the training. The training should be, again, an on-demand activity for them. There we go. The slide finally advanced to my end. The baby boomers, they prefer classroom learning. They prefer to be in the classroom as a whole. Again, you will always find exceptions throughout the different individuals within the different generations, but largely they really want to be in the classroom doing active learning from that perspective. Gen Xers, conversely, do not mind the classroom, but they'd much rather be self-paced and self-directed within a learning environment. And they do enjoy the technology-driven learning methods that are available. Generation Y, they're much more interested in blended learning, a little bit of classroom with the benefits of what classroom training can offer, but they also like to have the virtual training, the online training, whichever that you want to call it from that perspective, prefer working alone, but they do not mind helping others. And again, the Gen Z would come down to this on-demand generation from a digital technology perspective that says they really want to be entertained. They want a social aspect to training, and they respond well to interactive and very creative training. So it is a much different perspective with Gen Zers compared to even millennials, even though they are neighboring generations. One of the largest takeaways from this particular presentation is that each generation comes from a distinct area when it comes to digital and from technology, but they also think differently, they react differently, and they need different training methods applied to them to be able to get the most out of the training. And lastly is the concept that within a given audience, you may have individuals from every single generation within one single audience, and you must account for that variation when you're considering training and development design. Thank you.